So, about that Falcon and the Winter Soldier Episode 4 ending. Now that we're a little over halfway through the show, it seemed about time to throw a curveball, and boy did they ever! With a super soldier serum out there, the power broker looming in the distance, Zemo scheming, and the flag smashers growing ever more radical, it was only a matter of time before we reached some kind of tipping point. It just got a fair bit darker than folks were expecting. But then, it's not completely unprecedented. Now, before we go too hard into analyzing the exact meaning of the ending to this episode and its similarities and differences from an equally shocking comic book moment, let's once more go over who John Walker actually is. In the comics, growing up in the all-American town of Custer's Grove, Georgia, John Walker grew up idolizing his war veteran brother and sought to live up to the heroic image he had of him. In order to do so, he eventually contacted the Power Broker, a villain peddling his own knockoff brand of super serum to those willing to pay. John soon took the moniker of SuperPatriot, a self-appointed hero who discredited Captain America and claimed to represent America's true ideals with his own, more conservative-leaning take, colliding with Steve's more liberal approach. Comparing this to the MCU version, we've got a slightly different story. Here, John Walker served his own time in the military, earning a number of awards for his bravery and excellence in the service. And as those watching the show know, these accomplishments led to him being given the moniker of Captain America by the government after Steve retired from the position without a word to the public, leaving the country without its flagship superhero. This still leaves us with a man feeling the need to live up to a legacy, sure, but one who was given this legacy as a reward for his actions rather than directly opposing it from the start. Going back to the comics, John came to blows with Captain America over their incompatible views of American values, but surprisingly, Walker would later end up actually becoming the new Captain America when Steve gave up the mantle for a while. This led to an era of a more violent man wearing the classic red, white, and blue, and dishing out a much more brutal brand of justice, although over time he did attempt to be more genuinely heroic. However, his aggressive streak would eventually spell the end of his tenure as Captain America. When he came into conflict with a far-right terrorist group called the Watchdogs, a group that Walker himself admitted he actually shared quite a few extremist views with, the villains made the mistake of bringing his parents into the mix. Trying to play the hero he saw himself as, Walker attempted to interfere and save the two of them, but his rashness cost him dearly as his parents were killed in a hail of gunfire. Enraged, Walker went to town on the Watchdogs, and in a particularly gruesome panel, impaled one of them with his own rifle. These events, and another confrontation with Steve Rogers, who was momentarily simply calling himself the Captain, were the last straws in Walker's tenure as Captain America. Stripped of the name, he went off the radar for a while, only to instead emerge later under a new name, the USAgent. Free of the responsibilities and expectations that came with being Captain America and backed by the government, Walker now found his own identity as the captain willing to do the dirtier jobs his country wanted him to do, making him still serve as a darker reflection of Steve Rogers. And so this leads us to Battlestar. In the most recent episode of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, a non-powered John Walker, frustrated at his losses and inability to make a difference in the current conflicts, chose to inject himself with the super soldier serum after engaging with Karli Morgenthau, the leader of the Flag Smashers. With the serum said to increase what is already within a person, this led to a burst in not just strength, but in aggression. And when Karli accidentally kills Battlestar, John brutally murders one of her group's members in plain view of a shocked crowd, the iconic shield now drenched in blood, forever tainted. Granted, as we've established, this has not happened in the comics, and Battlestar is alive and well, but nonetheless, it still bears similarities to the experiences John had in the comics of losing a loved one to the villains he fights. Villains that aren't too different from himself, if not in ideology, then in methods. And the killing itself is indeed chillingly similar to the equally gruesome moment from the comics, and to an earlier MCU scene, being deliberately shot to evoke the conflict between Tony and Steve back in Captain America Civil War, another conflict that put law and duty at odds with personal ideas of right and wrong. The comic book and the TV series stories are full of as many interesting similarities as they are of contradictions. One sees John Walker as an initially antagonistic force that erred in his attempts to do good in his eyes and later found a more fitting identity, while this sees him as a man with initially good intentions, driven to madness after too many losses and dropping all heroic pretenses in a gruesome public display. The result, however, is the same. The actions of John Walker have stained the name and the symbol that is Captain America, and it is going to take a hell of a fight to cleanse it once more. Whatever happens from here is anybody's guess, but it's probably fair to assume that we aren't quite done with the bloodshed. John has become a major liability, and on top of everything else Sam and Bucky are dealing with in this series, there is no telling how they'll make it out of this one. The way I see it, we're gonna have ourselves a real last captain standing kind of deal.